So thank you. Let's go ahead and we'll get things kicked off. Thank you everyone for joining us for this November Healthy School Meals for All Coalition. See a lot of familiar faces. Also see some new faces and names joining us. So want to welcome you all to the monthly coalition meetings. These are an opportunity to hear updates of what's going on in the state of Wisconsin regarding healthy school meals for all. Give you a little primer of how the coalition or who's involved in the leadership of the Healthy School Meals for All Coalition. So here in the state of Wisconsin, we've got 3 organizations that are co-leading the Healthy School Meals for All Coalition. I'm Allison. I work with a nonprofit based in Madison, Wisconsin called REAP Food Group. We also have the School Nutrition Association of Wisconsin, represented by Caitlin Harrison and Stacy Nelson. And then we've got both Feeding America Eastern Wisconsin and Feeding Wisconsin, represented by Matt Steenstra and Jackie Anderson. Excited to have Nick with us from Senator Larson's office to kick us off with a legislative update of where things are sitting here in the state of Wisconsin. So Nick, without further ado, if it's okay, I hand it over to you.
Yeah, sounds good. Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Janis. I'm a policy advisor for State Senator Chris Larson. And started this journey with healthy school meals a long time ago, it feels like, with Representative Shelton, I think back in 2021. So to kind of give a lay of the land of where we're at right now, the budget process for the state budget concluded at the first part of July. We did not get the provision that we wanted from the governor's budget or the DPI budget. But Democrats did introduce independent legislation in February of this year. That legislation, as you can expect with this legislature, unfortunately hasn't received a public hearing. But we are continuing to bring up the subject. So when we were introducing our education package earlier in September, we also included healthy school meals in that conversation. And then again today, Jenna Jacobson was out in Mount Horeb introducing a package of agricultural legislation, which obviously this directly ties to. So as a part of the reintroduction of farm to fork, farm to school, and a couple other funding provisions for our rural farmers, they highlighted the need for healthy school meals as a part of this rejuvenation for Wisconsin farmers and for kids all across the state. We see nationally that this is an issue that our neighbors care about. It polls extremely well. When we're talking about affordability, especially nowadays when we see grocery prices skyrocketing, and folks utilizing food banks more and more, the importance of getting kids meals while they're in our captive care in schools is that much more important. So we're continuing this conversation in the legislature. I know that our office gets emails on this still, and it's something that we love to see. We want to make sure that we can continue to have neighbors across the state reaching out to their elected representatives, reiterating the points that we've done so many times before about the importance of providing for kids in our states and helping families navigate the unaffordable nature of living these days. So we're continuing the fight in the legislature. We are looking at least in the Senate side, one more session day prior to the end of the year. That's what we're thinking. That'll happen on the 18th of this month. But coming back into after the holidays, excuse me, we're going to again push to make sure that this is a top issue for the legislature to continue to work on. The reality of the situation is pretty stark. A lot of this hinges on what happens next session and who's coming into the building as new representatives or reelected folks. So we have to keep that in our mindset too, that we've been advancing this legislation for multiple years, multiple sessions, and the composition of the legislature, especially in the assembly, has changed. So we always have new opportunities to make our case to folks. So even if we're not able to get it through this session, we'll come back right at it in January 27, excuse me, to make sure that it's reintroduced and part of the state budget conversation again. That's kind of where we're at right now. And if folks have questions, I'm more than happy to answer anything.
Thanks so much, Nick. Anyone have any questions for Nick while he's on the call?
Okay. Well, if you do, feel free to email me. I'll put my email and contact information in the chat. Otherwise, always you feel free to contact Senator Larson and tries to get back to everybody. But yeah, reach out if you have anything.
Thank you, Nick. We really appreciate it. We'll make sure we get your email in the notes. Thinking of the notes, I'm just going to drop them in the chat here for folks, for those who are coming in.
I'm sorry, Allison. I did have a question. I was
Yeah.
driving, but I pulled over.
Yeah, Nita, what's your question?
Right. But all this been said, and I've been reaching out to the community, letting them know how important it is to write and tell their stories. Do he agree that we should continue to write our story, letting know how it's affecting us personally?
Most definitely. Stories in any elected sort of environment kind of fuel the debate, right? So when we're hearing from your name's Anita, so if you're writing in Anita, we want to make sure that not only are you expressing how this would help you, help your community, help your neighbors, but also having a direct ask to your elected representative. Will you support this legislation? Will you talk to your caucus members to get them to sign on to it? At this point, every Democrat in the state legislature, both the Assembly and the Senate, are signed on to this bill. There are no Republicans. So if you have friends in Republican areas, making sure that they have the direct ask and having them, if they don't get an email or a letter back to them, follow up with a phone call and express disappointments in their lack of attention to the matter. As somebody who takes a lot of phone calls in a legislative office, I very much hear when we are lacking in a response or have a disagreement, and all that gets shared with our bosses, right? We get off the phone with you, and I type up a message to my boss saying, Anita called, she's upset about this, we can fix it doing this. And that's, regardless of political party, that's how us as staff in the building operate for the majority part of the time. So if you're not getting responses or you're not getting the response that you're looking for from your elected representative, follow up with a phone call. And if some folks are sometimes a little bit scared the first time calling the legislature. So you can always call after 5 o'clock and leave a voicemail. That's a good primer to contact your legislator by phone. But generally from 8:30 to 5 o'clock every Monday through Friday, you can pick up the phone and call their office.
Yes, I have did that. I have wrote, and I'm grateful that they have called me back. And also, not only that, they have responded from the email. But my next question was, even though I did that, should I continue to write again? Okay, like I just did it maybe 2 weeks ago. Should I give it a little time in there before I call or send another email doing my why?
Yeah, and I would say it depends on how they responded to you. So did your elected representative agree with?
Yeah, it was very nice. It was very nice. They reached out. So so glad, Anita, that you reached out to us. I just, it was very warming and inspiring for me to continue to do more.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you can challenge your elected rep to do is, we had great that we agree on this, great that you're working on and supporting it. You can, I tell people all the time, you can ask them, who have you talked to about this? What other legislator have you had a conversation about the importance of this about? And that, that's telling us as staff, if we're reading the email or if the legislature is reading the email, it tells us that Anita's on the board, right?
Right. No, I just thank God for Feeding America, Eastern Wisconsin, with the Food Leaders Lab, training me and Allison from Healthy School Meals and all, meeting me where I'm at, how to do these things. And so I'm grateful because otherwise I wouldn't know. I would think that my voice didn't matter. And now I know my voice do matter. By doing this, I'm a part of change. So that's what I'm just trying to let the other community members know they can do this too. They are listening. They do call you back. They do respond. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm grateful for Feeding America, Eastern Wisconsin. I'm grateful for Healthy School Meals for All, for giving me the chance and the opportunity to be a part of something, to let them know that my voice matters and that I have a say in this and that I can do things that I didn't think that I could do. But thank you for listening to me.
That's awesome to hear. Before I came to Senator Larson's office, I was a community organizer. So those are the things that I started my career doing, and it's great to see it's continuing on everywhere.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anita. And I also just want to say thanks, Nick. I think there's just an indication that even though like legislatively, like things can move slow this time of year, things are going to move slower, but like there's clearly a lot of like momentum and eagerness to do something. And so kind of thinking about like what are the things people can do right now. Anita, Nick, like that's a really important discussion. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt.
you so
Thanks,
much.
Anita.
Thank you
Thanks,
both.
Nick. Anyone else have any other questions or thoughts to share? No? Okay, well, we're going to jump a little ahead in the agenda because we have a special guest from Colorado. Folks who were watching the different election results last week, there was some big news coming out of Colorado in support of school meals. And please correct me if I'm saying your name wrong, but I believe it's Anya from Colorado is joining us to share share a little bit about what's going on in the state and what happened and what worked really well to get the support to move it past the finish line. So Anya, if it's okay, I'll turn things over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Allison. Hi, everyone. I'm Anya. I work on public policy for Hunger Free Colorado. And I apologize, I'm losing my voice a little bit, so gonna be a little husky here. But thanks for the invitation, and I'm happy to share a little bit about how this has played out in Colorado. We have some unique factors at play there, but I think there's probably still some overlap. And so I'll start with a sort of high level what the situation is, why we had to go to the ballot again, and then happy to answer questions or speak to things that may be more useful to you all. But essentially, Colorado, we started a Healthy School Meals for All program back in 2022. And again, that was through a ballot measure. And the reason for that, we were the first state to do it via ballot measure. That really is because of limitations to our state budget. We have in our Constitution something called the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. It means that if you want to raise revenue, you've got to go directly to voters, among many other restrictions that kind of keep our budget in a stranglehold. So we've had about $1 billion budget shortfall for the last couple of years. So the path of simply asking for general funds didn't really exist in Colorado, but we still thought this was very much worth it. And so we took the path of a referred ballot measure. So in Colorado, you can either have the legislature refer a question to voters, and then it can also include a revenue raising mechanism if it's going to voters, or it can be citizen initiated. So we worked back in 2022 with the state legislature to refer the first ballot measure on Healthy School Meals for All, which was Proposition FF. And that passed with 57% support, and it created the initial program. And the vision of that was always to, in the first year of implementation, fully fund free breakfast and lunch for all public school students. And then in year 2, bring on additional investments in the whole school meal system, including training and technical assistance for things like kitchen upgrades, and dedicated resources for schools to purchase directly from Colorado farmers and ranchers, as well as dedicated funds for school districts to increase compensation for the frontline school nutrition professionals who are preparing and serving meals. So that was all supposed to come on in year 2. And the way that we funded it in Colorado, we have, like I said, a lot of limitations on revenue raising. So we worked with partners at the Colorado Fiscal Institute to try to identify what is an equitable funding mechanism here. And we landed on limiting income tax deductions for only households making $300,000 a year or more. which is about 6% of Colorado households. So that passed. We implemented year one in 23-24. It was peak food inflation. We saw a massive increase in participation, much more than we'd seen during the pandemic. So we saw a 31% increase in lunch and a 37% increase in breakfast. And then what had been pretty steadily over the last decade, 2.5% increases in federal reimbursement rates to match inflation was more than triple that. And so it created a bit of a perfect storm where our costs outpaced the revenue coming in. And so we pretty quickly were in a budget for shortfall situation, which was made more dire by the fact that in Colorado, like we had this particular funding stream that had to match up with the program, and no real ability to draw on the general fund. So what the legislature ended up doing, we found out about this in the middle of a legislative session. They ended up putting all of those additional investments that were supposed to come online in year two on hold, and sort of establishing like a stakeholder process for what would come next. And that led us to this past legislative session. We pretty quickly realized we needed to raise additional revenue, which probably meant another ballot measure, unfortunately. And so we tried to do that in that first legislative session, but were unsuccessful, and sort of told we want to wait and see how the data comes in and hold off another year, which we were bummed about also because we knew that would mean we'd be going in an off election year. We would have much rather been on the ballot in 2024 than in 2025. But so that brought us to last legislative session. We worked with great bill sponsors, and we referred 2 ballot measures. Now, this is another weird Colorado thing. We had to have 2 ballot measures because part of our Constitution also says that if you raise slightly more, any amount more than the midpoint estimate that the state put on a ballot measure, you have to still go back to voters and ask if you can keep it, rather than return it to taxpayers. It's wild. So we had 2 ballot measures. One was Proposition LL that was literally saying, can we keep the money we already raised for healthy school meals for all, rather than giving a $65 tax return to households making $300,000 a year or more. And then the second ballot measure was to raise additional revenue to be able to fully implement the program and have that long-term sustainability, establish a program reserve, all those good things. And we used the same funding mechanism. We just lowered the tax deduction caps to raise up to an additional $95 million. And so those were the 2 ballot measures that were referred during this past legislative session. Then the federal budget happened, and Colorado's tax code is also really closely tied to the federal tax code in some unique ways. So it changed the state budget situation, as well as making massive cuts to SNAP and Medicaid. But in a weird fluke with how our funding mechanism interacted with everything, it actually made it so we were going to raise more money than we thought. And so our state had a special legislative session in August, and we actually tweaked one of those ballot measures to say, hey, if there's additional revenue available after fully funding healthy school meals for all and all of these components, then those additional funds can go towards basically offsetting the HR1 SNAP cuts. Because all of those same budget woes that we faced, now the state has to figure out how to continue SNAP going without good tools. And so that is what ended up on our ballot. It was a bit of a rocky path to the ballot. You don't usually want to be changing your ballot measure language, 2 months before an election. But we decided it was the right path to go and went for it. And I think the biggest challenge we were concerned about was really around it being an off election year and not knowing what turnout would look like. We've done a lot of polling and know it's an incredibly popular program. But, when you're talking about a voter base that is very, very tax sensitive, and off years, that's challenging. And another fun feature of our Constitution is that these ballot measures have to be all in caps and start with shall taxes be increased by $95 million. So that's what people were reading on their ballot before getting to anything about healthy school meals for all. So that was voted on last week, and honestly went, I think, better than any of us could have predicted or imagined. Right now, the tax increase ballot measure is passing by 60%. And the one to keep revenue is at 66%. So even better than it performed in 2022, despite the off election year. And I think it just demonstrates that once people see the program in action, that the support only grows. Um, and that's been really really wonderful to see. So I think I know there are some probably unique hurdles there, but that our campaign has had many stages going back even to 2021 of, you know, legislative to ballot to legislative to ballot. So we've had some different features of needing to sort of be really aware in our messaging and strategy that actually our audience is everyday voters, not just legislators. So we opted to keep the messaging really simple, because that's what our polling showed was most effective, was just that no child should go hungry at school, was sort of our core message throughout the campaign, even when we added SNAP to the measure. Um, so I'm trying to think if there are other things that would be helpful. Maybe I'll just pause there and see if there are questions or if there are other things that would be helpful to speak to with what you all are thinking about or dealing with.
First of all, congratulations. Super impressive that you got this across the finish line. I'm curious about the polling piece and your communications, because those are both integral, it sounds like, to helping to get this passed. Can you talk a little bit about how you funded either of those components, the polling and or specific communications?
Yeah, so for initial polling, we fundraised specifically for it. Hunger Free Colorado did. We sort of led a really broad coalition. By the end, we had about 150 endorsing organizations, and we had a core steering committee that was sort of the decision-making body that was made up of largely grassroots organizations who were like on the ground helping pass things. It was important for us that it wasn't just like a pay-to-play campaign. And however, that that does present some challenges for fundraising. But we just made specific asks around polling. A lot of our polling was really focused on like, how do we get the ballot measure language itself as good as possible, working with lawyers and others to make sure that we were not going to run into legal challenges. But then within that, like trying to figure out, do these little linguistic changes matter to voters? But as part of that, we would do a battery of messaging, and then see how it impacted people when they come back and get asked the question again. And so that's what drove a lot of our sort of messaging strategy and what we focused on, at least with voters, and sort of where we wanted to steer the conversation. And then once it became a ballot measure, once it's on the ballot, every state is different, but in Colorado, we had to create an issue committee, and it sort of became its own independent body that we were raising money for, and then things would go through the issue committee. So our final rounds of polling were actually through the campaign, and focused on that. So it was kind of, we made some specific fundraising asks of groups, both at the state level and national groups, to do some initial polling. And then later on, it was sort of just like part of the whole campaign strategy.
Thank you so much, Anya. One question, I know you mentioned, keeping the language really simple. How did that resonate with I would say like different folks? I think one of the things that we bump up against here in Wisconsin is, the comment of like, those who can afford to pay for school meals shouldn't have to pay for everybody. And just curious if you, thinking about the structure of how you set that up, curious how you answered that in Colorado, or if you just kept that messaging the same of like, no kid should go hungry.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's something that changed over the years. So I would say back in 2022, when we were trying to get this referred, that was the main opposition argument from legislators, was why are we paying for rich kids' meals, essentially. And so we talked a lot about how we need to eliminate stigma and everyone benefits and the administrative burden being lifted and things like that. But also we asked that question in our polling. And it turns out it's one of the weakest opposition messages. Voters do not care. That is just like not where most voters, at least in Colorado, are at. And so we showed legislators that their voters don't care about that. And so interestingly, in the last couple rounds, once it was in place and folks were actually seeing the impacts on the ground and benefiting from it, we did not hear that argument nearly as much. It actually shifted. We had to face a lot more questions around like food waste and things like that. But people kind of gave up on that message somewhat. Like it would still bubble up to the surface, but I think they realized that wasn't actually that resonant with their constituents.
That's really interesting. And I want to be conscious of your time. So I know if you need to hop off too, I don't, please feel free. I'm curious about the food waste question too, because that's popped up here. And I do have one of my, a former colleague of mine actually has a question for the coalition because she's interested in helping with food recovery and food waste efforts with schools, Selena Darrow, but she couldn't be on the call today. So I'm just curious how that question has been answered in Colorado.
Yeah, I think it's been addressed in a few ways. One, it was helpful. There was sort of some parallel legislation that was run last session to support things like share tables and more composting at schools. No requirements, but basically trying to encourage that and make sure agencies are set up to support schools in doing that stuff. So we were able to point to that. The other piece we talked a lot about is just how, like, ultimately kids need time to eat and they want tasty meals. And the more you invest in this system as a whole, that's how you get that. So it was helpful for us that our bill was sort of a package. It wasn't just purely the free meals. It was also these investments in how do we improve the quality of meals? How do we make sure the workers are fairly compensated? How are we getting fresh local food? And so I think being able to point to those of like, and we also built in for schools to access some of those funds, they need to have parent student advisory committees that are informing. And it's a very low lift. Like there is not a lot around what those have to look like, but we put it in there as a value to try to build it into the system. And so we were able to point to those components of the program that haven't come online yet and say, like, that is why we need to fully invest in this program. So kids can sit down and enjoy the meals and the meals can be more culturally relevant, but you don't get that by pulling money out of the system.
Thank you so much. I see Nick, you've got a question.
Yeah, and thank you for coming and talking with us about this. So when you were mentioning that you did this as a package, was it, and this had to go before voters, and so was this part of all one large question to voters, or was this a sequence of events, I guess?
Yeah, it was all one question. So the ballot question we asked was about creating a healthy school meals for all program, and it included those components of free breakfast and lunch for public school students, dedicated funds for purchasing from Colorado farmers and ranchers, training and technical assistance and kitchen support, basically,
Okay.
and then compensation boost. So that was even going back to 2022, that's what voters have voted on.
Okay.
That's also part of what we polled on. Some of those individual components poll even higher than free school meals do. And so it was also like kind of backed up in our campaign strategy. Like we wanted to include those things because they're important to the coalition and we saw all of them working together. But our voter research really backed it up.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that answer because here in Wisconsin, we've kind of parsed it out into separate pieces of legislation and introduced it as, under one umbrella package. But that would be an interesting take on, future attempts at this, whether it's through the budget process, because all those components that you mentioned are critical pieces to making sure that this is successful. And then bring along private businesses as well. Thank you for that answer.
Mhm.
Thank Thank you so much. I will open it up quickly for any other questions at all. Hearing silence. Anya, thank you so much for hopping on our call and sharing so much. We are just thrilled for Colorado and all that you've done. And it's exciting to see how each state is making this happen, and really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and don't hesitate to reach out if we can support. We want this to be part of a big national movement. So have plenty of resources and things to share if that's ever helpful, and good luck.
Thank
I'll
you.
pop
Thank
my
you so much.
email in the chat and then we'll hop off, but thank you.
Wonderful. I'll make sure we get that in the notes. Thank you. All right. Well, we're going to pivot a little bit on our agenda. So for folks in the notes, I'll go ahead and highlight here, but we're going to pop back up to the top, and going to go to our second. Well, actually, you know what? I think these kind of go hand in hand. But Matt, we're going to talk a little bit about SNAP. But also want to just mention, we know the federal government is reopening. And so the School Nutrition Association of Wisconsin sent out the National School Nutrition Association sent out a alert earlier this week, letting membership know what this means, the government reopening for school nutrition programs in the state. And there is funding in the reopening to make sure we've got our school nutrition programs funded. But I want to jump down here to talking a little bit about SNAP and food share and what's been going on in the state of Wisconsin. There's been a lot of back and forth, and I'm going to turn things over to Matt and Jackie, if you're able to hop on too, just to give an update of what's happened over the last 2 weeks.
Thanks, Allison. So, yeah, it's been a year this past month, right? It's been stressful and scary, and there's been a lot of real harm done to families across the state of Wisconsin as they've experienced what it's like to go without the strongest nutrition program in the country. And there's been a massive amount of uncertainty, and that uncertainty has bled from the SNAP or food share program into even things like school meals. And so Allison's in the document that's shared at the beginning, the agenda, has an excellent breakdown, especially as it relates to child nutrition, of what's been happening. And I'm sure like SNA has done an incredible job too with this, how it relates to school meals. One of the key messages come out from all of this too is just looking at the different way that programs are funded and structured. And one of our key messages that we've been sending out to families, especially federal workers impacted by the shutdown, is the knowledge that you can apply for free school meals at any time. And so I think this program also, like this shutdown, also highlighted the value of both SNAP and free school meals for families and for kids. I'm going to share, and Jackie, feel free to hop in wherever, because I'm going to steal a couple slides that Jackie Anderson has put together to just help break down what's happened recently as it relates to the shutdown, and where we're at right now. Okay, Wisconsin. So, do you see my whole screen, or do you also see the little thing on the side with all the everyone's faces?
You're
No?
good. You're good.
Great. Okay, cool. So, a lot has happened in the past few weeks. I think it's almost better to start from where we're at right now. As of right now, I think it's just important to know where things end is Wisconsin families have their full food share benefits. People that were participating in the program in October received full food share benefits last week, Friday. And with the federal government reopening, the SNAP program not only is fully funded, and the USDA, I think even today it was issued a memo saying that families will receive their full November benefits. And then on top of that, the program is funded through fiscal year 2026, which is important because as the continuing resolution that is signed, expires and there is always a possibility that this pops up again, it's important to know that the funding for SNAP is funded through the end of the fiscal year, which runs through September 30th, 2026. But a lot had happened. We had, since the last time we talked, we have had a situation where the federal government did not fund SNAP. And I guess the way that it was explained, even though it isn't technically correct, but like funding expired on November 1st. But I think a better way to think about it is the last families received SNAP benefits on October 15th. And then moving on, there were no SNAP benefits promised or delivered since then. Near the end of October, we received word from Department of Health Services that we knew at the bare minimum benefits for November were going to be delayed, but we didn't know if that delay meant a day, a week, or longer. Then we had a Rhode Island and Massachusetts ruling by federal judges that were asking to release SNAP funding, and that's where the partial benefits kind of came out, and the federal government tried putting together what they were calling 50% benefits for families, but it wasn't really 50%. They did some poor math, and a better way to say it is it was going to be partial benefits. In fact, many families would get like 10% benefits. Another big set of families would get 0% or zero benefits. Well, Trump then appealed to the Supreme Court. The federal government said, okay, you got to redo this. And so the new math was 65% benefits. Again, it wasn't really 65% benefits, but it was a little bit more. So families, but you can see the whiplash going back and forth. Meanwhile, while all this stuff is happening, families at home, and I'm sure all of us have talked to someone, we're trying to figure out what is happening. Am I going to be able to go shopping for groceries? Right? That is the whole program canceled. Are benefits coming? Are they not coming? Am I getting $20 or $200? Um, then going on to the Supreme Court, Ketanji Brown Jackson granted a stay of a ruling that would have issued that would make the federal government that had said, "Hey, anyone that started issuing benefits, you got to pull all this stuff back." They issued a stay of that. And Jackie, I'm already getting the timeline messed up. Because what ended up happening is a judge in Rhode Island, I believe, said that basically this partial benefit thing doesn't work. You can't do it. You got to issue full benefits. And this is due to a lawsuit that was brought before this federal court, really around the non-compliance, the federal government not complying with, kind of unclear order from a judge. So while there was this small window, minutes, where it was legal to issue full benefits to participants, the state of Wisconsin Department of Health Services was on it, and they issued full benefits to participants. That window closed up very shortly after, and Wisconsin was one of only a few states that were able to get full benefits through. Um, so families that were participating in October were able to receive full benefits last week, Friday. Um, and when that happened, that also meant that if people were in the process of renewing their benefits or applying for their benefits, they didn't get that. So those families were left in limbo until kind of now that the full government has opened up and now that USDA has issued full benefits, we now expect those benefits start to be issued shortly. It's been a lot of confusion, and I think when I talk about real harm being done, um, the story of that is in the data and the stories from food pantries and hungry families across the state. So we had been working starting in October, at the end of October, of reaching out to food pantries across the state to start to measure what are you seeing right now and how is it impacting food pantries and families that are looking for food. What we found, at least in Feeding America East Wisconsin, is even before we started the survey, is in the month of September, between August and September, we had seen a significant increase in people attending food pantries. Then, once things went into October, this is before a single person had missed benefits, but there was a scarcity mindset when we found out that benefits were going to get delayed. And there was messaging sent out that your card possibly wouldn't even work at the stores on November 1st. So everyone does what people do, and they visit food pantries. Um, and I'm sure a lot of schools got requests for additional snacks. And I'm sure that there was a lot of families that might have been reaching out about, and this is when the message went out about free school meals and the opportunity to apply if you're not already doing so. But more than 80% of food banks across the state of Wisconsin saw an increase in people attending food pantries. And about a third of food pantries across the state saw an increase of at least 25%. And about 1 in 10 food pantries across the state saw an increase of at least 50%. This is again before a single benefit was missed. As this went into November, the first week in November, what we saw, at least in eastern Wisconsin, is more than a handful of pantries calling us reporting that they had run out of food. We had one pantry say that they saw 300 more people in line than normal. We had another food pantry representative come into our offices with his head in his hands because he ran out of food and he had another service in 2 days and nothing to serve people. And this was unprecedented and never happened before. This was a time when families, we started to see what life would be like without the SNAP program. Like we got a small glimpse into that world. And what we found is that when the government decides that we're going to forego the strongest nutrition program in the state and we're going to rely on charity to feed families, that when you do that, you break charity. And that was what we saw. And it just really emphasized the importance, not just of the SNAP program, but of every single nutrition program that's out there, especially child nutrition programs like school lunch and school breakfast and after school meals and connecting kids and families to the nutrition that they need. So it's been a harrowing time, but it's really emphasized the need for really strong state, federal, and local policy to help make sure that families stay fed. That's what I got.
As always, Matt, thank you for the recap. I want to open it up to folks on the call. Questions, comments, things you've been seeing in your area.
Hi, I am Anita. Matt, you did a marvelous job on telling that, but I just wanted to tell it as a person that utilized SNAP benefits and what I experienced. And I also do volunteer work at West Care here in Milwaukee. I had never seen it, but it just brought me back to when I was a child, how the lines and how we stood in line for soup pantries in order to feed our kids. And that's what it reminded me of this time, not knowing where the food was going to come from. And so I've seen a lot of people in the community did, like he said, got their SNAP benefits. And when we're looking at the news first said that you're going to get 50%. Then it says you're going to get 35%. So it was a lot of uncertainty there. And as a parent, your main goal is to provide food for your child. And, so when they did give us the food stamps at 12 o'clock midnight, a lot of parents got up that morning and ran to the store because I think it was a thing on the access code saying that they were going to take them back. So if you got a message like that, they're going to take you back your SNAP. What are you going to do? You're going to run and spend up the SNAP that you had. So I think it's going to be a problem now because not even though the government is back up, we got those stamps early and they ran out to the store and they just bought anything. They didn't run to buy healthy things. They ran about everything because I went into the store and there was nothing on the shelves. There was nothing really that I wanted, and I found myself just getting anything so that I ramen noodles, pizzas, and normally I don't do that. But I wanted to be able to have the resource and the access to put food on the table for my grandkids. And a lot of other families did that. So this was a wake-up call for the community. You know what I'm saying? And we just took it for granted that this was going to always be there. Me, myself, too, took it for granted that this was going to always be in place. But now, to me, this brought a lot of awareness to me that I did have a garden, and it brought me back to my days when I was a child, how my grandmother and my mother used to can stuff. So I started back doing that this year, okay? I started back, the pantry was giving us onions, a bag of onions, and if I didn't use the onions right away, I chopped them up and put them in a Ziploc bag, and they're in the freezer. And like I was telling other people in the community, if you have a garden and you have an excess of other things, share it with your neighbor. This is a time to come together because we still don't know, and because we really don't know about politics and what Matt was saying. You have to meet us where we at. A lot of us don't understand this. This is Chinese to us, but we're trying to understand how the policies and what channels they have to go through. All we know is that you're not getting those stamps. That's all we know. What are we gonna do? So we went into a panic mode. Thank you, Matt. But I thank God to Matt, which Matt kept me informed through email, letting me know, and I tried to share what I was finding out with the community, and a lot of people just wasn't listening. They just wasn't listening. So I'm trying to find out another way of really communicating with mostly peoples of color. What can we do, to keep that channel open where we can stay in tune, where people can meet us where we at, so that we stay up to date on what's going on. Did that make any sense to you guys? But that's how I feel. I just gave you my honest opinion about it.
Well, I think, Anita, it goes back to, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. You're always such an inspiration and so great at keeping us grounded. I do think, too, going back to what you talked about earlier, your experiences and everyone on this call who has a neighbor or themselves, if they experience that confusion and fear around losing SNAP, it's an absolute opportunity to reach out to your legislators and either send an email, make a phone call, do whatever you can to keep telling those stories, because we know, we're safe for a while, but who knows what could happen down the future. Like we don't, we don't anticipate anything, but I think we've got a taste of there is a potential that we could lose SNAP. And I think it's just, we need to keep our foot on the pedal to remind our legislators how important that program, as well as so many other programs, are to keeping us grounded and fed.
Yes, and I do understand that, and that's what I said. I thank God for you, Jackie, Allison, and Feeding America, Matt. It's because of you guys telling me that this is what I had to, what I needed to do, and I did it. I had never did anything like this before in my life. And as you all go, you can all say happy birthday. My birthday is tomorrow, but I'll be 67 years old, and it's sad to say that I didn't know these things. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know these things. So it's a lot of other community members out here too that don't know. If it weren't for you guys teaching me these things and giving me the opportunity, sharing with me what I can do, and holding my hand doing these things, I would be in the same situation they're in, not knowing. So I'm just on this call to say thank you, because I did that. I wrote the letters. I called the legislators. I did what you said to do, and I got proof. I have letters where they wrote me back and stuff, and that's what I was trying to tell the first legislative man that was on the phone. I did the work. Thank you, Jackie.
Anita, thank you as always for just being an amazing human being, an amazing inspiration to us all. And thank you so much for sharing. I admire the work that you do. Every time I chat with you, I just very grateful for you and just inspired by the work you do. So thank you for being on this call and always sharing. And happy birthday too. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I know we've got just about 8 minutes left in the call, so I just want to make sure we cover other items in the agenda, but do you want to pause for any other questions or comments? No? Okay. So just want to give some updates. If you scroll down to page 3 in the agenda, coalition and campaign strategic plan updates. Just wanted to give you all an update of some things that we've been doing. So leadership team had the opportunity to sit down with Senator Rachel Cabral Guevara, and she's the lead author on the what I'll say is like the food additive bill in school meals. And so it was an opportunity for us to say, you know, thank you for your support of school nutrition and school nutrition professionals. We know in the state of Wisconsin that most, if not all, you know, school nutrition professionals are looking or don't serve these products that have these food additives, but we appreciate your support for school nutrition. And hey, here can we talk a little bit more about some of the work that we're doing to support school nutrition programs. So it was a really nice opportunity to learn more about her work, and to chat a little bit about what the coalition has been up to, and to let her know that we are here, all of us, the leadership team and all of you, as resources as she's working on school nutrition, ways to support school nutrition programs here in Wisconsin. Our next bullet point is just wanted to give a shout out. Stacy Nelson and I were able to present at the School Nutrition Association of Wisconsin Fall Conference at the end of October, and we shared about healthy school meals for all. A lot of great comments from school nutrition professionals. I see a number of folks on the call from who were at the conference, and a couple of takeaways that stood out to me. Important to highlight, you know, we talk about the cost of healthy school meals for all here in the state of Wisconsin, and we've given that average that, you know, for the average taxpayer, healthy school meals for all is going to cost somewhere in the ballpark of $60. That's for every kid who's interested in to get a free breakfast and a free lunch. And we had a comment of like, hey, that's a really great stat, but can we compare that to other costs that the state is funding? You know, thinking about different healthcare costs and just other state funded projects in general. And so that's something that diving into to see if we can get some more cost comparison for coalition members to chat with others about. And then we had someone in the you know, with a really a business mind, and he said, you know, it's really important to remind folks, especially if they're in that, you know, thinking about you know, revenues and expenditures, to say like, when you have fewer students who have access, you know, there's fewer students participating, and meaning your school nutrition programs are, you know, operating below capacity. Now we know our school nutrition programs are doing phenomenal work as is right now, but just kind of knowing that whole, like, if we could open the door to participation, just think about how much more support we can get for the school nutrition program. So kind of trying to just mold our wording a little bit more to like that business world was an interesting comment. So really great conversation. Stacy, anything you want to add at all from our presentation back in October? And certainly don't mean to put you on the spot, but if there's anything you care to add.
Yeah, no, I don't think anything. I think you already hit on the one that probably I took as, oh, that is a really good point. Was I'm pretty sure it was an industry member that mentioned like the business model. If like if we were any other business and we were operating at 60, I think 60, between 60 and 65% seems to be the national average of participants based on attendance. And if we were any other business that was operating like that, we would be considered unsuccessful. So I think that that was really a unique way to think about it that I never thought about. And so allowing other people that maybe aren't utilizing our programs to be able to have the choice to use them could be really huge all the way around.
Thank you, Stacy. So beautifully said. Jumping down just with our last 4 minutes, wanted to give a shout out to the Beyond the Bell podcast. I believe I saw Jill on. Jill is the host of the Beyond the Bell podcast. And recently Caitlin and Stacy, Caitlin T and Stacy were able to be guests on the podcast. So if you haven't listened yet, definitely check it out. We've got it linked in our notes. And then scrolling down a little bit further on page 3, we want to put out a volunteer request. Last January, we went to the Wisconsin State Education Convention down at the Baird Center in Milwaukee and had a lot of fun talking with folks across the state for while we were doing a tabling event for 2 days. and we're going back this January. And so we're putting out the call for volunteers to join us at that table. We've got a limited number of tickets that will cover your entry. If you're at all interested or just have questions more about it, please feel free to reach out to us at healthyschoolmealswi@gmail.com. And we'd love to chat with you more about that opportunity. Shout out to, I know Matt was there, Caitlin T was there, Anita, huge help in getting us names on our listserv. Emily Riedler was there as well last year. So hope to see some more folks joining us down in Milwaukee. Then we're putting out a call too. So fundraising for the Healthy School Meals for All Coalition. We're looking for opportunities to raise some more funds to be able to support website hosting, mailings, conference attendance. And so if you have ideas, please share them with us. We're interested in hearing whatever may be popping into your mind. We just put a couple ideas on the notes here. We do have a link that you can share with friends and family that'll donate to Healthy School Meals for All. Or if you're like interested in hosting an event and collecting donations, we'd love to be able to help support you in those efforts. So please feel free to reach out again, healthyschoolmealswi@gmail.com. Jumping down a little bit further, so we had Anya Rose from Hunger Free Colorado, and just a phenomenal talk, and just so excited of what happened in Colorado last week. But to wrap up our call, just want to reiterate the different resources that we currently have available for you. So that Take Action Toolkit, and then there's some advocacy resources from School Nutrition Association of Wisconsin. I briefly mentioned this when Anya was on, but Selena Darrow, she's not able to join us today, but she's typically on our calls. She's up in Green Bay with the nonprofit Rooted In, and she's wondering if any school nutrition programs are currently working with nonprofits on food recovery. And so she's interested in connecting with folks, and we included her email there in the notes. So if you are interested in learning more, please reach out to Selena. There is also a new CEP fact sheet from FRAC that highlights how schools qualify, or what schools qualify here in the state of Wisconsin for CEP, and if they're participating or not. So definitely check that out. Today is also local food day for the Wisconsin cranberry. I don't know if I see anyone on from the Wisconsin DPI, but if you are a school nutrition program serving Wisconsin cranberries, please put it in the chat. We'd love to give you a shout out. And then just a reminder that we've got 2 grant opportunities with due dates coming up in December and in January. So USDA Farm to School grants are due December 5th. Now I'm gonna put a star on that. We don't know if that date's gonna be adjusted at all due to the government shutdown, but right now act as though it is still December 5th. And then the Spark and Innovation grants are going to be due on January 23rd of the new year. Thanks, Stacy. Big shout out for cranberries going with the Thanksgiving meal. That's great. And last things on our agenda here, action items. As always, we're going to encourage you to reach out to your legislators, especially if they're on those committees on education, letting them know about Healthy School Meals for All and wanting to see where they're standing, or have they had conversations with others. And then if you have skills to share, if you love social media, if you love writing newsletters or any other skills, please reach out. We'd love to have you support the Healthy School Meals for All Coalition. But with that, I know we're a minute past 2:30. I'll pause for any last questions or comments, or if you have to hop off, have a wonderful Thursday afternoon, and we will see you again in December.
I'm going to do a shout out to Emily as well. She had cranberry parfaits for breakfast and a broccoli cranberry salad for lunch. Yum.
Awesome. Nice job, Emily. That's awesome.